board. Erica, could you please do a roll call?
Absolutely. Chair Bluth,
Here.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Here.
Committee Member Carter,
Here.
Committee Member Osterbar,
Here.
Committee Member Polly let us know he will be absent. Committee Member Schmidt.
Here.
And Committee Member Tregenza.
Here.
Staff member present are Community Development Director Cole, Principal Planner Roveri, Associate Planner Sabdo, and myself, Recording Secretary Barrera.
Okay, it looks like we have a quorum. So let's open the consent agenda. It looks like we only have the minutes from the 2nd of March. Does anyone have any comments or issues that are on the consent agenda? Erica?
Take this time to let the members know, of the public know how they can participate.
Yeah,
Can provide public comment. Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. This meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey and also Comcast Channel 25. If you would like to provide public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone, making sure to join in time to accommodate delays. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. Since this meeting has started, you'll find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off your TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. There is a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting. Please stay within that limit. Thank you.
I don't see anybody. Erica, do you see anyone?
I do see one hand raised. I'll go ahead and allow them to speak.
Please do.
Peter Said.
That's correct, Peter Said. I'm with Home Life Design Studio, and I am available for item number 4, 542 Foam Street. I'm the Senior Project Manager with Home Life Design.
Thanks. Well, we'll get to that one soon. Does anyone have any comments that are on the consent agenda?
Sorry, Chair Bluth, there is another hand raised.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and allow them, ask them to unmute.
Please.
Ashua looks to be the name. Forgive me if I mispronounced that. Looks like they're unmuted now. Achua, would you like to go ahead and provide public comment? They are unmuted.
Should we come back to them later?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda item, which is the 2nd March notes?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Can we have a roll call? Erica?
Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Carter,
Aye.
Committee Member Ostervar,
Aye.
Committee Member Polly is absent, Committee Member Schmidt,
Aye.
and Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Okay. The minutes have been approved with a vote of 6.
Thank you. We can move to comments that are not on the agenda. Are there any comments by committee or public? I don't see anyone. Erica, do you see anyone?
I don't see anyone.
Okay, we'll close the consent item section and move on to public, the first public appearance item. So that is consider 2300 Garden Road Architectural Review Application ARP 20-0271 for preliminary architectural review of a conversion of three existing commercial buildings into 64 apartments. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bluth. Our Community Development Director, Kim Cole, will give a presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just share my screen here. Can everyone see my presentation?
It shows the screen and then the next slide.
Yeah, it did that yesterday too. That's interesting because it just shows the whole on my screen. So I don't know how to fix that. Are you able to at least read the cover slide, 2300 Garden Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you maybe try closing it and opening it again? Then do the present icon again.
Yeah, I did do that. So it has something to do. I'll share the other screen and see if that's any better. Can you see now, or is it still in the partial outline form?
It's still in edit form. Could you do, I think on the top left corner, there's a presentation button. Does that work? Yeah,
Did that work?
still loading.
So it's on my screen. Yeah, I'm gonna have to just do it the other way. There's something happening with the.
Okay.
We'll walk through it and we'll see if we can do this. Thank you, Architectural Review Committee. My name is Kimberly Cole. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Monterey. And I will be presenting the project today for 2300 Garden Road. It's preliminary architectural review of a project to convert some existing commercial buildings to apartments. I do want to focus on the words preliminary architectural review for the public's benefit. There's 2 levels of architectural review. There's preliminary review, which usually consists of basic mass and siting of the structures, as well as looking at privacy impacts. Final architectural review is where building materials, window changes, landscape plans, and I'd say the real finished product details will be considered. So this applicant chose to divide it up into 2 steps. So this afternoon we'll be looking at preliminary architectural review. So just in terms of background, Garden Road was an area that was viewed potentially as an opportunity for us to increase housing supply in the city of Monterey. And the city rezoned a portion of Garden Road, basically from Garden Road south towards Highway 68 to allow multifamily overlay, multifamily uses. That zone will allow up to a total of 405 multifamily units. We've permitted 91 units to date, and this afternoon's application is an additional 64 housing units.
Kim, it didn't move to the next slide.
Really? Because it is on my screen.
Do you have 2 screens? It might be that you're showing the wrong screen.
Oh, maybe that's, oh, let me try again.
Yeah, I only see it in edit mode.
That's not gonna work. It's gotta be this one.
I think the way you had it the first time was fine.
So let's try this again. Can you see now?
That's the same as what you had before.
So is it legible or not legible?
It's legible, but it looks like it's in edit format.
Yeah, it's not going to, for something's happened, because we've successfully done dozens of presentations, so something's different.
I think Fernanda was saying it's not moving out of the first slide to the second or third, so.
Let me try that. How's that?
We're still stuck on slide number 1.
And
On
Fernanda, you can request control. Maybe if there's something you're
Okay.
familiar with, you could try it.
Here, I'll stop sharing.
It could just be the 2 screens.
Okay, Kim, is your presentation in the presentation folder?
Yes, it is.
Okay, let me see if I can, maybe I can bring it up and move the slides.
Sorry, this happened at council last night too. It was interesting because I haven't had this problem before.
Is that full screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I already went over this slide. I talked about the number of units. 91 units have been permitted to date. Next slide. When the original rezoning was approved, there was a full CEQA document prepared on the rezoning. And as part of that rezoning, there were mitigation measures required for all the projects that cover these subject areas. That document was ultimately certified, reviewed by our planning commission, and certified by our city council. And as you see in your agenda report, we'll be bringing forward those mitigation measures to this project as well. In addition, because of the size of the project, we prepared an addendum to that environmental document that was reviewed by the planning commission and was certified about a month ago. No new impacts have been identified from the original vision to allow 405 housing units in this area. Next slide. So the project description, there's 3 existing commercial buildings, and the proposal is to convert it into 64 residential units. I think one of the interesting things about this project is we're getting a little bit more diversity in the types of units. We see 13 studio apartments, 49 1-bedroom units, and 2 2-bedroom units. For the most part, all of the changes will be occurring within the existing building footprints. The one physical change to the building will be exterior decks so that each unit can have private open space attached to it. There will also be a new trash enclosure constructed on the side of the building, not visible from Garden Road. And there will be bike and general storage incorporated within the existing building footprint. So every unit will have a bike rack as well as a closet for storage. In terms of general city regulations, just in terms of background, the city ordinance requires 20% of all housing units over 5 be deed restricted for affordable housing. And in this case, 13 units will have to be deed restricted in compliance with the city ordinance. And that'll happen automatically just as part of implementation of our affordable ordinance. Next slide, please. So the site is fairly large. It's just over 7 acres in size. And a couple takeaways I want you to have by looking at this graphic. The back of the lot from Highway 68 towards the building, there's over 300-foot setback from Highway 68. The buildings are not visible from Highway 68. The property is currently, or the site is currently surrounded by parking. So there's a substantial amount of parking for the uses. And what you can't really tell from this is there's actually a grade difference between Garden Road and the project site, where the buildings are for the most part not visible from Garden Road. If you tour the site through the parking lot, obviously that's where the best views of the project are. Adjacent next door, you can see there's a fairly large open space area. Those little blue squares in the back are a telecommunications facility. And then to the right is an office building and is the closest neighbor. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide, please. So this is looking at the site plan from Garden Road. There are 2 driveways to the site that exists today, along with the parking. The applicant is not currently proposing really any substantive changes to the parking areas. There are 3 buildings, as I mentioned. Building A is really I'd say the most dominant building on the site. It's at the back of the lot. And buildings B and C almost appear as 1-story buildings as viewed from the front parking lot. You really can't see the buildings except if you look obliquely through the driveway towards the building. Next slide. So this is building A. This is the building that's in the very back of the lot. This is looking at the front of the building facing the rest of the project. And as you can see, it looks like a 2-story building, and it'll look taller as you go around the back. You can please, next slide. So at the top, we have the existing elevation drawing, and on the bottom is the proposed elevation drawing. And so you can see the mass of the building is not changing. The roof heights aren't changing. What is changing ultimately will be the building materials that you're not reviewing today, but there will be a series of decks proposed so that each residential unit will have its own open space area. Next slide. So these are the sides of the building that have faced the adjoining properties, and very much sort of the same. You know, the overall building mass is not changing, but there will be new decks for the open space. And then the next slide is the back of the building that faces Highway 68, and you can see, you know, it almost appears like a 3-story building from the back, and the new additions will be the decks on the property. Next slide. So I took a photograph of the staking that was installed for those decks. That's that back elevation that you see. And then where the orange netting is where the decks will be located on the building. This is not visible from Highway 68. So this is Building B, and Building B sits sort of on the right side of the property. Next slide, please. And you can see, I'm just going to flip through these slides. It's basically the same scenario. And this is actually from the front. And you can see from the front, the building basically appears as a 1-story building facing Garden Road, if you could see it. And here's Building C, which is the other building at the front of the property. As I mentioned, it appears more like a 1-story building. Please go. And keep going. And these are the sides. And the last elevation drawing. So the architect did provide a section drawing. What the section drawing shows, Fernanda, if you can take your arrow where the dashed line is of the existing building wall, And so that's the existing building wall, as you can see, that comes down, and to the left side are the interior spaces. You're seeing like a cake cut slice through the building, and to the right, you're seeing those decks that will project from the existing buildings. Next slide. This is a graphic of the trash enclosure. It will not be visible from the public right of way. It's, it'll be fully enclosed trash with actually a roof that looks very similar to the buildings themselves and will comply with all of the city's waste reduction requirements for sorting various trash types. Next slide. So preliminary review is the siding, form, mass, and architectural style of the building. In my opinion, the siding, form, and mass are not really changing that much. We see that it meets the development standards. It's largely conversion of an existing building. And I do want to point out that when our city council was looking at this issue, they liked the idea of converting existing buildings to be more environmentally sensitive. There are additions. Those deck areas are being added to the building for open space and the waste enclosure. In staff's opinion, those were fairly minor alterations to the structure. And we found it to be compatible with the surrounding area and that it's not really changing that much from what exists today. Views, privacy, and living environment. The site is downhill from Garden Road. The construction will be largely unnoticed. We did not identify any privacy impacts, nor have we received any concerns since the story pole staking went up across the back and across the building. Next slide. So the city changed its plans to allow residential development along Garden Road. The project is consistent with those development standards. And I think the overarching objective the city was trying to achieve was to increase the amount of housing that could be constructed in our community. And the project, is compliant with the zoning vision of 405 units per Garden Road. Next slide. And so our recommendation is to adopt the project with conditions of approval. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Kim?
I do. Thanks, Kim. I'm just curious, it might have been in the materials, but how many units will this end up being?
64 housing units.
And so 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom studios, a mix?
Correct.
Okay. And what are the the parameters for how many parking spaces per rental unit? Does this exceed those or meet them? I'm just wondering, does it have a lot more parking?
It has more parking than is required. Let me just pull up. Oh, so it has more parking than is required by the city code. Let me just flip to that section of my plan check.
My reason for asking that is there an opportunity here to reduce some of those paved areas by getting rid of some parking spaces and making it more, green areas, picnic tables, play areas for kids, sandboxes, that kind of thing?
There are. The overall site provides currently 158 parking spaces, and 93 parking spaces are required. The number of parking spaces, just so you understand, vary by unit size. So our code requires, and I know this sounds weird, but 1.2 spaces per studio, 1.5 per 1 bedroom, and 2 for 2 bedroom units. So when you do all the math, it ultimately comes up with a parking requirement of 93 spaces. And they do provide 158 today.
Well, so it's almost a third more than they need parking spaces.
Correct.
I would really be interested in seeing the owners or the people that are doing this project, consider that as far as, helping to lower some of the, global warming effects of paved area, in a very little way, but also adding to the adding to the experience of living there and having more access to places where you can sit in nature and stuff like that, instead of just, surround the thing with asphalt and just leave it that way just because it's there, instead of like, let's try to make it a little nicer. So I'd love to, have them consider that.
I have a question related to that. Just as a question, is that something that we add as conditions, something to see in a future review, or is that something that normally we'd review on a preliminary review like this?
Well, I think if you're interested in that, I think it's good. I think the project architect is on the line. They can hear the comment, and then maybe one of the questions you can ask the project architect is, would they be willing to explore that in final architectural review and potentially add it as a condition as part of this project, as part of preliminary. So I think we have a unique opportunity to have that conversation with the project architect.
Okay. I'm trying to limit myself to questions right now and then get to that. But so another question, I saw these porches, which is, and it looked as if there were a percentage of opacity. I just wondered if somebody could speak to that, kind of the intentionality of that. Maybe it's 80, 90% opacity. Just curious if there could be some discussion on that.
So are you asking if they're opaque? Like, are the exterior materials opaque so you can see through to the building?
The opposite, opaque being so not able to see through, which it looked like that was the case. Some kind of pattern being explored there. That's obviously going to be a later review, but it tends to be rather functional. Buildings like this, people tend to put a lot of stuff out there, and so I'm just curious if that was intentional, and if there's any other we could expect future exploration of what that pattern is or what the material is. I saw two different things. One looked like there were slats, and then the section, it looked like there were solid sort of panels. So I'm just.
I did not explore yet building materials with the applicant. So.
Yeah, if they're on, maybe they can speak to that. Just if that's.
Sure.
Should we move to see if they have a presentation for us?
I have a couple questions.
Okay, for staff. So why don't we go ahead and just take questions for Kim, and then if we have any questions that would be to the applicant, we could do that after their presentation if they have one.
So I have a couple for Kim.
Okay.
What's the percentage of low income in this? I may have missed it, but what's the percentage of low income in this development?
Yeah, it's 20% of the development, which is 13 units.
Okay. And what do we have permission for water for?
So the project is sized for the water credits on site.
So we could start this once everything goes through permitting.
Yes.
Great.
Sorry, one other question, context related. It was nice to see the image, and I know where this is, but seeing as how we are seeing more bikes and things like that on this, I'm curious if that in general it would be nice to understand a little bit more the transit opportunities when we're presented these projects. Is that something you could speak to?
I could speak to the bike routes, but I don't know where the bus routes go in relationship to this project.
I have one more question. So if we have the water on the property, but we're waiting for the change in zoning, is that still something that's going on, that we're waiting for the change in zoning for the water as a condition 2 stipulation?
So we believe this project will be able to proceed because of the historic water use on the site. So it's within the credits on the site, and it does not need a new meter. So we believe it'll be allowed to proceed.
But previously, the State Water Resources Control Board said we had to rezone the water from industrial to residential on Garden Road. Is that still happening?
So the rezone's already occurred.
The rezone of the water? I know the rezone of.
Rezone of the property. So what they previously said is we pursued as a city an additional 9 acre-feet to make all of these projects larger. And we were awarded that water from the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. And the State Water Resources Control Board said that would be a violation of Condition 2. So as a result, all of these projects were downsized to the on-site water credits and to the historic water use on the property. And so we've permanently lost, with the 4 projects that will ultimately go forward, 118 housing units. This project wouldn't have been larger, but the other 2 you reviewed, 2,000 and 2,600 Garden Road, and there will be another one coming forward, 2560 Garden Road. They would have been larger projects with more residential units, but they were downsized.
Kim, I see that the proposed balconies are 350 square feet in size, but what are the actual dimensions? How far out will it jut from the existing building?
Let me just look at the plans while maybe we go out to public comment, and I will find that dimension for you.
Thank you.
The applicant here?
I believe the applicant representative is Achua.
Their hands raised. Would the applicant like to make a presentation or that and answer questions?
I've asked the applicant to unmute and go ahead and speak. Looks like they're unmuted. Would the applicant like to speak?
We can't hear them.
Erica, do you mind repeating the phone number so maybe they can call in and participate if it's not working in this format for whatever reason?
Definitely. To join by telephone, you can dial 833-568-8864. Once again, that's 833-568-8864. The webinar ID for today's meeting is 161-914-9563. That's 161-914-9563.
Perhaps while that's happening, if I can remember, I think on a previous project, it sounded like there is perhaps some bike path planned or zoned for this area.
I was just down there. There's bike paths on both sides of Garden Road. And then there's some bus stops near the airport.
Okay.
And I think there's one on Garden Road as well. I'm not 100% sure of that, but there are down your or at the airport, and it's relatively close. Sidewalks going in that direction.
Great.
There might be a stop close to where the Herald used to be. Let's stop over there.
Hello?
Well, I
We
think
can hear
we
you.
hear.
You.
Here we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I got both my phone on and my headset. So, hi, this is Anelia Chua from Paul Davis Partnership.
Great. Welcome to the meeting. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us.
Yeah, so I heard your questions earlier regarding the parking area to see if we could convert the extra spaces into an open space. And we're gonna try to look at that and see what we could present for the final ARC meeting. We'll consider it, and also the opacity for the glass railing. We haven't really looked into that detail yet, but it'll be presented for the final presentation.
Okay, so initially it's currently, I guess you're saying it's glass, but
It's
perhaps
glass, yes.
okay. should we slide into comments and things now, or should we?
Just questions for now.
Questions for now. Okay.
And you may not have heard one of the questions. I'm looking at the section drawing for the deck. It appears that the deck is approximately 5 feet in depth. Can you
6.
confirm? It's 6, okay.
Yeah.
And what's the length?
It varies per the width of the unit. So
Thank
whatever
you.
the width of the unit is, let me see. They're 10-foot module, so it's probably 6 by 10, approximately 6 by 10.
Thank you.
Do you have any plans for public spaces in the building for like laundry or?
We do
other
have a
services?
laundry.
Okay.
It's on the main level, and there's one building that has 2 levels, and the lower level, which is, it doesn't have access to the main level, but we need to provide adaptable units. So most of the ground level will have their own washer and dryer, and the common area with washer and dryer for the main level units.
Yeah, very good question. That relates somewhat to the outdoor use spaces, but also just in general, some building like this with this size to have a sense of community. Just wondering if there are other multifunctional spaces, any sort of community spaces within the plan. Apart from just a laundry room.
Well, for now, we have just the storage space for them, the adaptable unit storage space, and the laundry and some bike storage room for common areas. But we have also like the deck on the back side of building A that's used for the community.
Okay, so there is a larger deck that's shared by all the residents.
Yes, there is on the back side of building A.
Okay, is it possible to just see that really quick?
I wonder if I could share my screen.
Either that or
Yeah, you cannot, but
If
Fernanda can.
Fernanda
share
has
her-
it. Yeah.
Fernanda can share her screen of the rear elevation of building A, which is the first set of elevation drawings. And then if you can see that, maybe you can comment on that.
Sorry, I was muted. Kim, do you know the sheet number?
Oh, I was gonna have you go to the presentation, but otherwise it's sheet A31 is the exterior elevations of building A. So it's,
Or you could show A22 sheet.
Oh, A22.
Plan would be nice, yeah, as well.
I think that's the
Right.
only common space. Deck.
It's taking a while to load. Okay, 85. Oh. This is 822. Is this the deck?
That's the one on the back side.
30 square feet.
And just how is that being imagined to be used at the moment?
We're probably gonna put some tables and chairs out there.
Tables and chairs, no plans for kind of fixed grills or anything like that, or
Not right now. They have ample space for that on the deck for each unit, but
Okay,
but that could be considered too. I'm
Mhm.
not 100% sure right now.
sure. I know it's a preliminary review. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Does the committee have any further questions for the applicant?
On top of what's mentioned earlier, we're also adding an accessible path of travel from the units to Garden Road.
If you have that, is there a site plan associated with that yet, and kind of where that's happening? I guess typically we like to
think it
review a
was,
site plan too. If
It's shown on A11 sheet. Currently, there's no accessible path of travel.
I'm getting there. It's just slow. Is this?
A11.
Oh, A1?
Maybe the civil might show it too. Let me see.
So C1
Oh yeah,
shows it as
it's right
well.
there. The yellow highlight. That's the new sidewalk.
okay, great. And I guess it looks like some of those parking areas are already. I'm trying to read what
existing.
the symbols mean. What is the green? What are the green and blue, and orange?
So that's where, based on the stormwater calculations, they're going to be new pervious pavers for the parking area in certain areas. So it shows where existing concrete's going to be changed into pervious materials to comply with stormwater requirements.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming none of this is impacting existing trees and things like that. These are all, yeah.
Correct. There are no tree removals planned.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, should we move to public comment? I think Erica just mentioned recently how to contact, get through. Erica, do you want to have
Go
a
ahead and remind the
review?
public. Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. To join the meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name they've typed into Zoom. And I currently see no hands raised.
Okay, we can come back if we do get somebody, but right now, why don't we just close public comment and move on to committee comments? Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make?
Sure, I'll start. I think generally I agree with a lot of the comments Kim was making, that it's really nice to see these existing industrial buildings getting repurposed. I think that's generally really positive for a lot of reasons. It would be nice to, in the future, kind of see more context related to kind of transportation opportunities. And then, as some of us have started to state, I think in buildings like this, it's fairly important to have some sort of community space. Say if you're hosting guests or having slightly larger gatherings, and just a place where you can meet your neighbors in a context that is open for that. So I'd encourage, as I think Patrick mentioned, looking at opportunities for just recreational spaces, more green space, areas where you can enjoy the outdoors, and then additionally consider something like that either within, or because the weather here is fantastic, expanding on that patio for spaces like this. They help sell the units, and they're actually, I think, really important for sense of community, and making this feel a little less like you're just living in a box. Additionally, I'd also strongly encourage not using glass for the railing. It's a look that I think doesn't feel very residential. There's a lot of issues with it. Bird strikes, they just get dirty really easily. And generally speaking, in residential units like this, people tend to put a lot of things on their balconies, sort of start to store things there, and it tends to just be a little unsightly eventually, and allows for more privacy as well. And then hopefully, if we were to do a proposal for this, we'd see some more communal spaces, see a little more, of course, on the materiality and those things. Hopefully some sense of a lighting plan and things like that as well. That's it.
I think this is a good move in the right direction. I mean, it certainly looks like a great plan to repurpose an existing industrial building, and given the state requirements that we're facing for housing, it will make a nice dent in that number. Do we have any other comments before we move on? Do we have a motion?
I need to pull up the agenda item.
Yeah, I was going to say I could do that.
I'll make a motion to preliminary approve architectural application ARP-20-0271 at 2300 Garden Road for the conversion of 3 existing commercial buildings to 64 apartments. And this is for preliminary.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, that's motion by Zoe and seconded by Shelley. Erica, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Sure thing. Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Carter,
Aye.
Committee Member Ostervar,
Aye.
Committee Member Polly is absent, Committee Member Schmidt,
Aye.
and Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Okay, this motion carries with a vote of 6. The decision is appealable to the planning office within 10 days. We have applications in the planning office or online.
Great. All right, let's move on to the next public appearance item. That's consider 542 Foam Street, application ARP 210181 for preliminary and final architectural review of a first-story addition, reframing of a second floor roof, and to add dormers and exterior alterations to an existing 2-story duplex. Staff, do we have a presentation?
We do. Hi, my name is Christy Sabdo, Associate Planner with the City of Monterey. I'll be presenting the project. See how I do sharing my screen here. Okay. Are you seeing one screen?
Yeah, it looks the same way that
That
Kim
Kim's did?
started off on.
Okay, I'm going to try it one more way. How's that?
That's it.
All right. So I'll be presenting 542 Foam Street, an architectural review permit application for a first-story addition, reframing the second-story roof, and exterior alterations to an existing two-story duplex. The project is located between Hoffman and McClellan on Foam Street. There are 556 is residential, 572. Otherwise, it's like commercial and offices along Foam Street. The zoning is Plan Community Lighthouse Specific Plan. It's located in the commercial land use area of the general plan in the New Monterey neighborhood. I just wanted to share a few pictures showing the house as it is and with the story poles installed. You'll see the roof changes for the expanded dormers and the first story addition showing on the bottom here. This fence is going to be reduced to a height of 4 feet. The picture on the lower right-hand corner is the east elevation adjacent to the former Hodges. And you'll notice here that there's no windows. So I'll refer to that later in the presentation. And here's towards the back of the property, there's an existing garage and a studio. And then adjacent at the rear is the Wave Street apartments. It's really close to the property, but there's an existing, or I'm sorry, a proposed second story deck that you could see some of the netting. And I'm sharing a picture of the studio because I'm going to share the proposed colors for and materials for the proposed house. So here are some pictures of just the surrounding property. This is showing 556 Foam, which is adjacent to the residential property, another multifamily property next to that. And then here's the former Hodges property. And some business and commercial uses on the opposite side of Foam Street. The applicant proposes to construct a new first-story addition to reframe the second floor to add dormers and exterior alterations to the existing two-story duplex. Alterations to second-story roofs in a design review neighborhood require review by the Architectural Review Committee. So in detail, the applicant is proposing the construction of a new 212 square foot first-story addition to enlarge two downstairs bedrooms, to reframe the second-story roof over two upstairs bedrooms to create more headroom, and the construction of a new 100 square foot second-story balcony at the rear of the property, or at the rear of the residence. Exterior alterations include the replacement of all windows and doors and siding. Site improvements include new landscaping and exterior wall-mounted lighting. Here's the existing site plan, and I just highlighted the existing house because the garage and studio, there are no proposed changes to those accessory structures. So the changes are just to the existing house. Here's the proposed site plan showing the second-story deck and some of the additional roof elements for the first story. There will be some roof changes as well. I'll show the roof plan and later slides here. Here's the proposed floor plan. The existing floor plans on the left, proposed floor plans on the right, and I've highlighted the areas where there's additional area being proposed. There's two areas that they propose for additional room for bedrooms, and then there's this additional area on the front for a window area, and they will have a covered porch like they did previously. Here's the existing front elevation. You see that new window area here, or revised. They already had one, but it's a little bump out. And then there is, there will also be a covered porch on the proposed house. And then I highlighted the roof element on the east side just to show that it's going to be more proportional with the proposed dormer extensions. There's dormer extensions on both sides, but this on the east side, the roof is lifted to add those dormer extensions. And I just want to note that the existing height is staying the same. So here's the east elevation, which is adjacent to the Hodges property. There's going to be an expansion of the dormers, and we have just some areas where on the first floor where there's going to be some additions and some new windows. Here's the west elevation adjacent to the 556 foam residential property. There's an expansion of dormers on this side as well. And then a first floor expansion. And then you see the second story deck at the rear. Here's the north elevation showing the new proposed second story deck, the sliding doors, there's a first story deck, which is expanded over the entire rear, and just like a bump out with the windows. So the existing roof is 312 and with some 512 and 212. And then the proposed roof has variations in roof pitches, but mainly 212, and also has 712 and 312, and for the first story roof elements, 512. So there's a variation in roof elements here. There is a proposed landscape plan that was submitted, and there was a statement on there that the majority of the plants are drought resistant and native. There are some ornamentals, but largely they're native and drought resistant. So the architectural review findings, the proposed siding, form, and massing are similar to that of the existing residence, and they are appropriate in that they are of single family residential character. The architectural style is appropriate. The exterior finishes complement and enhance the immediate area, New Monterey neighborhood, and the city. And so this finding talks about the proposed project will not unreasonably impair the views, privacy, or living environment currently enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity. So in terms of the proposed project, the proposed first story addition and reframing of the second story roof are appropriate in that they would not substantially change the views, privacy, or living environment, and I'll kind of explain that. So there's a single family residence adjacent to the west 556 foam. Yes, there are additional windows being proposed on the second story for the expanded dormers, but the property at 556 foam has a lot of mature trees, and it does not appear that these windows will impact privacy for the residents, as it's quite heavily screened by these trees. So privacy impacts aren't anticipated. Story poles were installed. To date, we haven't heard anything, haven't received any comments. So the commercial property adjacent to the east has no windows. Privacy impacts are not expected in this area. And then the Wave Street apartments, it's 50 feet from the proposed residence, or the changes to the proposed residence. The windows are really small in the Wave Street apartments. That's why I'm not expecting any privacy impacts with that second story balcony. And it is a good distance away from the apartments as well. The ridge line of the residence would remain, and the roof pitches would change. However, there doesn't appear to be any views of the bay from 542 Foam Street. It appears that Wave Street apartments likely block all or most of the views of the bay. So view impacts are not anticipated. The project is consistent with the commercial land use designation and that residential uses are allowed within this commercially designated area. The project is consistent with the new Monterey area plan and that there are no goals, policies, or programs that apply to this property because all of those goals and policies apply to R1 and R3 zone lots, and this project is zoned Planned Community Lighthouse Specific Plan. So the staff prepared a consistency analysis with the Lighthouse Specific Plan. It's quite lengthy. It is in your packet, and I'm available for any questions if you have any regarding that. But we did find that the project is consistent with the Lighthouse Specific Plan. The proposed exterior finishes of the residence would be a combination of stucco and vertical board and batten siding, a wood finish around the base of the residence, aluminum gutters and downspouts, aluminum clad windows, and composition asphalt shingle roofing. The exterior colors would be off-white and beige with some grays and greens and browns. And it does complement the studio in the back as well. And these exterior features are appropriate for the project site. The second story balcony would also be constructed of wood. That finish is appropriate for residential character. The fence and gate would be in the same style as the existing wood fence. It's just going to be lower to 4 feet and it would complement the finish of the residence. And the landscaping improvements would aesthetically enhance the immediate area, and no tree removals are proposed. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary and final architectural review of the construction of a first-story addition, reframing of the second floor roof to add dormers, and exterior alterations to an existing second-story duplex with conditions of approval. There are a couple special conditions of approval. The Lighthouse Specific Plan requires the planting of a street tree, and the city forester recommended a water gum tree. And then a street tree grate is required, so we included that in the condition. And then we also have a maintenance condition that the new street tree shall be watered for 1 year by the property owner. And if the new street tree should be replaced if it fails to thrive within 1 year. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also on the line.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions?
I do. This is a very interesting area and property with a lot of odd adjacencies. I'm curious, and perhaps the applicant can answer this, or you can, Christy. Is there a reason this wasn't just brought up as a second story? I mean, it seems odd to characterize these as dormers because they're really extending almost the entire length of that structure. And so I'm just curious why that decision was made to do that rather than just. And if you look at across the street, et cetera, there are other structures that are 2 stories. So I'm just curious about that. And then also curious about the requirement for a tree grate. I don't recall there being any other tree grates on Foam Street that I can recall. And I am already seeing some tree grates on Lighthouse that are already girdling trees, and so they require maintenance to cut those tree grates back. So generally speaking, in the field we don't like to use them for that purpose, but so just curious about why that's a requirement when I don't think I'm seeing them anywhere else on Foam Street.
Yeah, so as to your first question, not quite sure how to answer that. I mean, they have an existing second story, but as to why it's not categorized as a second story addition. Is that your question?
Yeah, or it is probably more the applicant to answer.
Okay.
It is style, right? So and it
Mhm.
does seem a little kind of in between. They're not
Sure.
really dormers. It's kind of like just stretching it to almost, obviously it's about head height in
Sure.
there, because this was probably an attic space. But if they really wanted just 2 stories, I'm curious why that wasn't done.
Sure. I can answer this street tree grate question. It's a standard within the, let me see if I can find it in here, within the Lighthouse specific plan.
Which expands to
Oh,
foam,
it-
I guess.
Yeah, actually, it's a guideline. It's not a standard. And it says it's guidelines G72, use street tree grates that have the ability to contain root systems so that the sidewalk is not disturbed. So being that it's a guideline, the committee could decide not to require that street tree grate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't suppose I need to be getting into those technicalities, but there are other methods for constraining tree roots. And then also another preference by a lot of cities is to create a couple paths under the sidewalk so that the roots actually go into adjacent soil. There's also, of course, just other structural soil and things like that most cities have moved to these days.
Sure.
In preference over that. So.
Okay.
That's my question for now, and I'll.
We can refer to the applicant.
Comment, but if the applicant, has the answer.
Why don't we continue with questions for Christy, and then we'll ask the applicant if they want to make a presentation, and they can answer questions after that. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions for Christy? So Christy, I have a question.
Sure.
Was there any historic review that house went through?
No, so it's in the new Monterey reconnaissance survey, and the property was listed as 6Z, which means it's ineligible on the national, state, or local level.
Okay. Okay, might we move on to the applicant? I think the applicant was there. We saw that when Erica was looking at
Applicant is here.
questions.
I've went ahead.
Peter, yes. Peter, would you like to make a presentation?
Thank you, Councilmember Bluth. I don't have a presentation for you. I believe Ms. Sabdo did an excellent job in presenting the project. I will address Councilmember Ostavar's question concerning characterization. The house is very old and has undergone a number of additions that may or may not have been recorded in the past. And I believe you're right. It was an attic at one time that got converted into a second story. And then at some point it got converted into a duplex, and at some point dormers were added. And the reason we decided, the reason it's been characterized as dormers rather than a second story was because, as we discussed the plans with city planning over the course of a number of years, this just became the language that was easiest to communicate about these elements over the phone. And it is, I think, just carried through the project as we've gone on. But currently it is an existing 2-story building. Those air quoted dormer areas do pop out of the existing roof. The existing roof is a 2x4 roof that needs upgrading, and one of the reasons why we're reframing it. It's essentially a second story that's already there, and we are just looking to continue to maintain the character of the house while achieving the goal of bringing it up to code. So I hope that answers your question, Councilmember Ostavar, and if you have any other questions, I'm available.
Yeah, I think mostly I just still kind of curious. Again, it seems very close to just making it an official second story, and why that choice was taken to not just make it sort of an intentional second story instead of kind of expanding the dormers, especially if sounds like you're redoing the entire roof anyway.
I think your question is that why don't we characterize it as a second story? If it
Not just characterization, right? It's you've really, there's only, it looks like a couple feet is left of the existing roof, and why not just make this an additional roof? I don't quite, I guess, understand why there was a need to just expand sort of dormers rather than just make it a roof.
I think part of it is trying to maintain the same character of the house. And so I don't have the elevations pulled up, but there is an attempt on our part to maintain the same character of the house. The original character has a large 712 roof. We were looking to maintain that. And so from the front elevation, you are looking at the street, looking at the house, you see the steeper 712 pitch, and then beyond it, you see the 312 and 512 additional pitches. And so we were just looking at maintaining that initial impression of that 712 pitch on the roof, followed up by the softer pitches, basically trying to maintain the character of the house.
Any other committee questions for Peter? Okay, thanks for that, Peter. It was, I think it really does look like a great upgrade to that property, and certainly looks like it needs a lot of help. And the way you've done the design so it matches the guest building in the back will make it look really nice. Do we want to move to public comment? Erica, do you want to pass on your message again?
Sure. To join the meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. There's only one attendee, which is the applicant, Peter, so there are no hands raised.
Okay, do we want to move on to committee discussion? Any comments by committee members?
I've got a couple, I mean, I think this is a vast improvement on the existing home, but I kind of agree with Payam's comments about, I'm not a fan of, and you see this all over Monterey, in my neighborhood and New Monterey, where you can just spot them where somebody threw dormers on an attic and called it a second floor, or turned an attic into a usable room. And I just, you should just call it what it is. And I think saying, oh, we're trying to, retain the original character, which is like saying we're trying to make it look kind of hokey, like they just threw dormers on this thing and made a second story out of it, instead of taking the opportunity to say, wow, we could actually make this look like it was planned as a second story instead of just dormers all the way back. So, I think it's, I don't want to, cause a problem with this. I think it's fine. I'm going to vote for it for sure. But yeah, it's a good lesson in, why take something that was kind of slapped on and temporary and make it more like, just accentuate it more instead of
more slapped on. And
more slapped on, like there's more of it, so I think it's a vast improvement. But yeah, it could have been an opportunity to take that kind of slapped on haphazard look of adding dormers to a second, or not even a second floor, just to an attic, and make it look like it was well thought out from the ground up. But, I think this is going to be, a vast improvement, blah, blah, blah. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree. I think, it will be a vast improvement. I know the area very well, and it is quirky, so I'm inclined to allow for quirkiness to occur. But I'm also inclined to I'm on the fence, inclined to say no, because it does seem like this is just a lazy kind of approach to just kind of bloat your dormer. These are not dormers. I mean, this is kind of I think not fitting with the existing character. I think that's a misstatement. I think the existing character, if we were to look at a side by side of the existing and the proposed, the angle of the roof is very different. It's not improved. You could have taken that existing angle of the roof and just raised it up, and that would have been, I think, keeping with that character and style. So I think it's not particularly good design. But again, I know it's an improvement, and I'm inclined to approve it based on that, and then just the quirkiness of the surrounding neighborhood as well. But moving forward, if this were in perhaps a different neighborhood, it would be for sure a no.
Yeah, I just to add again, it's not really. I don't think the goal should be to mimic the existing character, but to mimic the original character of the original house, which was, a beautiful little craftsman style salt box house that had, a beautiful pitched roof. And then it kind of got, these weird wings slapped on it at some point so that you could add a third bedroom or whatever upstairs. And I'd love to see it go back to that original, let's make that craftsman style salt box a 2-story craftsman style salt box instead of, a 1-story house with a big old attic that people live in. So, yeah. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Christy, would it be okay to let Peter comment?
I think that's fine.
So if you let the applicant comment, you have to open it up to public comment again as well.
Okay, why don't we open it to public comment? And Peter, what do you think? I mean, it does seem, since it's not an historic structure anymore, I mean, keeping the dormers probably wasn't even part of that original concept for the house when it was built. And you might get a little bit more room out of it. I mean, is it something you'd be willing to consider to just make the roof line higher, and I'm gonna make the roof higher and then keep the original roof line?
So what I'm hearing is that you like the original character of the craftsman style home, and that the existing additions to the home are a little slipshod, and no one really likes that particular aspect of the house. I think myself included. There are a number of constraining factors. One is that the ridgeline is already at the maximum ridgeline allowed by the city. And so we're not able to put the ridge up any higher, which would really allow for the second story to look correct. And at the same time, we have an existing house that already has existing spaces that have been grandfathered in and permitted. And so, those spaces are already there. That's another constraining factor. And a third constraining factor is what the owner is willing to do, or where the owner is willing to go as far as budget, et cetera, et cetera. So I can propose this to the owner, changes to the owner. However, the initial plans were, this has been in planning for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. And so the owner is eager to move it forward.
Okay.
Could I have a follow-up question? Is that
Sure.
okay? Thank you for that. I think that's, understandable constraints. I'm curious about the ridgeline constraint. I don't know if somebody from planning can comment to that, because I do see, contextually, across the street, et cetera, there are plenty of structures that appear to be taller than that. And so why would that ridgeline be constrained at this lower level?
Christy, in your consistency analysis, did you look at the height of the building and the
So I'm pulling up the lighthouse specific plan. See what it says about height. One and two story 25-foot maximum height buildings are preferred, subject to objectives of this section. Then it says 3-story buildings are 35-foot maximum. So if you have 2 stories, it's 25-foot maximum. If you have a 3-story building, it's a 35-foot maximum height.
So you could have just called this a 3-story, added more room in your attic, and you would have been fine. Is that?
I don't think they could do a 3-story.
No, that changes the type and the
Mhm.
construction type and all the code.
But according planning would allow for 3-story, but it's more difficult for you. Is that what you're?
It substantially increases the cost of construction to go 3-story because you have to change the type of construction.
Even if it's just the roof.
Well, it's not just the roof. You got to increase all the structural members down into the foundation.
Right. I'm just saying in this case, it's just that roof shape is changing, and that's making it 3-story, I guess. And then I guess you still have to add the structure per the code because you're calling it a 3-story at that point. Okay, so it's additional cost. So part of this was cost. The reason were those choices.
Okay, I don't see anybody else out there for any additional public comment. So why don't we move back into committee comment, and do we have any other ideas we want to bring up on this one, or should we move to a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And Patrick. So motion by Zoe, second by Patrick. Erica, could you please do a roll call for us?
Sure. Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Carter.
Aye.
Committee Member Ostavar.
Aye.
Committee Member Polly is absent. Committee Member Schmidt.
Aye.
Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Great. This motion carries with a vote of 6. The decision is appealable to the planning office. I'm sorry, the planning commission, and applications are available at the planning office or online.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Do we have any staff reports?
I don't have anything to add other than the updates in your packet. But if you have any questions, please let me know.
Do we know if we're gonna start doing field trips again?
I have not heard from our city attorney's office. That's a determination that they need to make along with our city clerk's office. But I don't think we're there yet.
You can always go on a bike ride like I do and check it out on your own. So
Yeah, I was able to check ones out that are close by pretty easily.
It's just nice to get everybody together and then we all
Yeah.
see each other, and
Yeah.
some of us we haven't even seen in person.
Yep.
It's been a long time.
Hi.
All right.
I do have a little bit of a housekeeping question. There's been some emails, and I think they've been added to public record and things like that about a different project. I couldn't remember if I was seeing a date when that was going to come across our desk here. This is the Archer Street.
I can't think of the address. Do you have the number?
Yeah, you were on this email. It was mostly Chris, I think, he took you off. There's I think there's questions about oak trees and things on it. It's by the school. The original property was largely just oaks and other scrub trees and things. I'm just curious if we have a date when that review will happen. I have different travel planned and things like that. I'm just curious.
I think I know the project you're talking about. Is it on the corner of Archer and McClellan?
Yes, that's it. Yep.
Okay, that one is incomplete at this time.
Okay.
They need to resubmit. And then at that point, we will review, do our completeness review, and then it'll be eligible to be scheduled to an ARC meeting.
Okay. And then just a little curious, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we're done. We'll adjourn at 5:26. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.